So let's talk about English versus Danish because most of your career has been recorded in the English language, but you have released two albums in Danish as well. I would love to I'd love to hear your opinion on whether or not you feel like your homeland connects to the Danish albums the same way that English-speaking countries relate to your English albums, and if there is a difference in that, in your opinion.
Well, I mean, it's kind of tough to compare or compete or compare anything to English because it's just the spoken language. Most of, I mean, I wouldn't say most of the world, obviously, Russia and China, South America, but the thing is, the two Danish albums is not they're not just in Danish. They're also storytelling of my childhood.
Right.
So not just the words, but the whole feeling in the music and stuff like that is almost the sound and the smell of my youth.
Right. So it's
And they were all,
autobiographical.
yeah, they because the lyrics are written by my biographer.
Okay.
These are the only two. These are the only songs that I have not written the lyrics, but the lyrics is almost the musical version of the book.
Okay.
So when the first lyric arrived, one night when I was sitting in my studio or stuff like that, and I looked at it and I said, "That's a song that I wrote, or that's a lyric that I wrote," because it was me. So I started looking at that because I'd never really, besides one song in my career, have written music to words. I always write my words after I established the music because I hate to change anything.
Okay.
So, once I know the melody is secure and everything like that, I will feel the music out and where it's taking me, lyrically wise. But now I have this Danish lyric in front of me, about me as a child and stuff like that, as a young man. And so I went to the piano, which is really not where I sort of write the rock songs. And I started there, and instantly, it was clear where I was going with that, and recorded the song, and I sent it to my friend, and it says, "Man, are you also crying?" Because it hit me so hard. I'd never been there because, like I said early on, I was escaping from Denmark. I always said, "I'm never gonna come back. I hate the fucking place." It actually took me almost 30 years and a whole new generation and everything that the old country represented, the negative side, to disappear. And I was one of the first one with bleach blonde hair in Denmark. I was one of the only ones who had dreams,
Right.
and that was really against the rule and stuff like that. So you know, it was coming that full circle, and then songs about my mom and everything about the small stores that are not there anymore, and talking to the guy who's you know oh yeah.
Yeah. And you talked about piano. I have another question here about piano. So I'm kind of segueing off of your answers here, just so you know. Piano has had a huge role within your music, at least from my perspective, listening to it. And that, like you said yourself, that's not typically a staple of rock and roll music. How did you make that work over the years? Because the piano is amazing within your music and your sound. So how
Well,
do
I
you
mean,
make that work from a rock and roll standpoint?
yeah, well, but now you're talking about my solo albums. There
Yes.
it belongs because I mean, in these days where everything has to have a label, or everything has to compare. When it comes to my solo albums and my inspiration and my influence and what I have been leaning up against, I mean, we are talking Dylan, Springsteen, Neil Young, and Tom Petty. I mean, those are like my four horsemen of inspiration. Elton John, and then there are newcomers like Ryan Adams and things like that that combines that song. I mean, the piano and the Hammond organs are my two favorite instruments. And so, but they didn't belong in 80s rock and roll.
Right.
At least not the style we were. But another thing that I'm also sort of like bringing out is that as we got along, Vito and I always saw that we were actually heading somewhere else with it, and we wanted to go towards Journey and Kansas, and use the keyboard the way they used. I mean, the '80s keyboard was somebody standing behind the curtain playing a pad.
Right, right.
And it's like keyboard, was not allowed and stuff like that. But it had been obviously, you know, immortalized by John Lord and Deep Purple and Keith Emerson and Elton John, and of course in Journey, Greg Raleigh and Steve Walsh in Kansas, two of my favorites and things like that. And that's why we wanted to do it, but it was constant. We were constantly fighting that the '80s image and things like that, So once the opportunity came, it was something that we wanted. We never really got to do it at the end, but had we done a fifth album, and had we sort of like moved around from grunge and picked another corner where we just waited that out, White Lion would have definitely been in the prog rock going into the future, with some big songs where the keyboard was going to have almost as big a part as the guitar.